Awesome. Well, hey, Todd, thanks for taking the opportunity to jump on this new podcast real quick. And what I wanted to do, so this is the Roadmaps Highground2Highground podcast. And one of the things we're trying to do in this podcast is help, we talk about the ball field, the battlefield, and the boardroom, and how, these high grounds have shared similarities. So 18,000 foot peak in North America feels the same as 18,000 foot peak in South America. And so that elevation always feels the same, and we're used to that elevation, which should give us encouragement that we can reach that elevation on this peak called the boardroom where we are now. And the genesis of this whole podcast show was yours and my conversation last week about your path towards being in the mergers and acquisitions space. And so this is the first episode of you and I just talking about this. Ross will be another one of our co-hosts on this, isn't able to be on today. Ross is a brilliant guy, fought in Afghanistan. He was in the show Restrepo when 3 members of your unit are Medal of Honor recipients, and there's a presidential unit citation and multiple Silver Stars. I mean, he was just in a lot of fights. And it's amazing to watch him, get his degree at UTD, then go to work for one of the world's biggest hedge funds. And what we want to do in this show Roadmaps is it's almost like a turnover brief, right? Like, when someone's coming over to work in your AO and you're about to leave that AO, you give them the cliff notes on, hey, here's how you do, here's where you are, where we are now, but faster, right? And that's the whole point of the roadmaps. So for those of you watching and listening, this is the first time. My name's Clint Bruce. Todd and I went to the same school. He's a little bit younger than me and certainly aging better. I played football at the Naval Academy, served in the special operations community, and then really just fell in love with starting businesses that allow me to work for the best leaders in America and create amazing careers for veterans and athletes so we can win the war on veteran suicide with the power of daily wins and a good day's work. And for me, transitioning from the ball field and the battlefield to the boardroom felt similar to learning a new sport. Hey, who do I want to learn from, and how do I earn the right to be around them? Like, I want to find leaders I want to learn from, be around, and provide value to. And if I provide value to them, then I get to learn from them, be around them, right? And I think that's a model that works. And but Ty, you're the co-host of the show, but 2, you're our first guest, because I want to talk more about kind of what we talked about last week as it relates to mergers and acquisitions. So first, give everybody a little bit of a snapshot of your background and prior to 15 years ago yesterday, raising your hand, swearing to the Marine Corps.
That's right. Yeah, 15 years ago this week. Graduated from the Naval Academy class of 2006, entered the Marine Corps, and it's crazy. It's been that long now.
Yeah.
So, but I won't dwell on that because it's been a couple more years for you. So,
who spoke at y'all's graduation?
Dick Cheney.
Oh yeah. Congratulations. So went in the Marine Corps. Went in the Marine Corps.
Selected infantry. That's what I had my eyes set on.
Yeah.
Went East Coast, 1st Battalion, 8th Marines. We made it over to Ramadi, Iraq, 06, 08, and served as battalion training officer and assistant operations officer after that. When I got out, I wasn't interested in the long-term working for the government. That just wasn't
right.
Really where I had my heart set. And when I got out, I had it imprinted in my mind, whether it's from parents or leaders in the past, that, well, you've got a pretty looking ring, you've got overseas experience, you were a leader of men in the Marine Corps. You knock on a door and it's going to open for you.
Yeah.
And that transition, right? It's just like, all right, hey guys.
Yeah, we think it's going to be an escalator or an elevator. Like we live the battlefield, and we kind of get at the base of the boardroom mountain, and we're like, all right, where's the elevator? Where's the escalator?
Yeah.
It's really not a sense of entitlement as much as it is just kind of what you believe, or you've seen other people do it well, but you don't know how the sausage is made. Like there's some assumptions, and there's probably some hope woven through there, but. Yeah, that's why the whole show exists, is to say, like, hey, man, there's no elevator and there's no escalator, but there's a path. And here's one I took, and here's how you take a better one and a faster one.
That's right. And I probably fell in the same category that a lot of vets transitioning out. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I wanted to work in business.
Yeah.
Right. and that was about it. So, and as anybody who works in the real world will tell you, it's like, well, business, that's a pretty broad definition.
That's like saying, hey, I want to be a mammal.
Yeah.
It's like Kingdom, Phylum, Genus, Species, Class, Order. My middle school teachers would be so impressed that I remember that, right? Yeah. It's like, hey, I want to be we think at the phylum level, but there's so many, it's almost this dilemma of opportunity and choices.
It is. And then you start getting questions, I meet with recruiters and they're like, well, what industry you want to be in? And I'm like, I don't know. So that I was successful. I was in operations, I want to be in. Yeah, and it's like, well, I mean, ag or finance or industrial energy. I'm like, I don't care, right? I want to work with a good team. I want to solve problems. I want to use my skills. But all that matters, right? And it matters to the recruiters. It matters to the companies that hire you. But really, when you get 5, 10, 15 years down the road, it matters. It will matter to you.
100%.
Well, and so I got out. I went to a couple of career conferences. And after having a lot of meetings, then they started asking me, I was like, well, what did you major in at the academy? I'm like, history?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, we're really looking for engineers, math majors.
12 hours shy. 12 hours shy of a general engineering degree.
Like, it's a Bachelor of Science. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
So that was like an automatic. And then, you meet with, well, it was like infantry, right? We did a lot of logistics. We did a lot of coordinated movements. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You meet with some logistics and movement companies and like, well, we really want supply chain. And like, well, we work with supply chain.
Right.
Yeah, kind of.
Not explicitly. It's kind of
not explicitly.
Especially when you're in infantry, when you're in a combat arms profession, there's a percentage of what everybody else does that you do because you're autonomous to a degree, right? So we kind of exist in this microcosm, and that's not marginalize anybody who has a specialty. That's just mean like, hey, at the end of the day, we're responsible for the final inbound leg of beans, bullets, and band-aids, right? So we're doing a percentage. Yeah. We're the welcoming party for all the other folks that have specialties.
Yeah, and we're gonna come back to that here in a few minutes. That kind of dynamic, that challenge of, well, sure, I've got some engineering education and I've got some supply background, but that's not really what I did. We'll come back to that because that really impacted me in my last transition. I finally met a company, phenomenal company, CH2M. They've since been acquired by Jacobs, and Jacobs is run by Pagata. Yeah, so fellow academy grad.
We build, we fight.
Yeah, so went to work with CH2M Hill. Had a great connection with the team there, working with some fellow academy grads, but also West Pointer. And but just doing operations and maintenance,
control everything.
Yeah, I figured they just needed help, right? It was part charity and part, but it really was. It was. I was working with trades. I was working in an industrial setting, actually on the nuclear side, but a lot of blue collar trades workers that understood their craft. It's still in the field. It was jeans and boots. It was a good transition from the Marine Corps, and it really was. It tested my leadership, having to work with a heavy union trade organization, learning that side, living in a different part of the country, went to the Pacific Northwest, just different, heavily regulated. There was no improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Yeah.
There was
suppressed. Improvise, adapt, and overcome is in some ways suppressed in a way.
Massively. There was a follow the rule, follow this instruction to a T, and if a couple of letters are off, then thou shalt not, because you're not qualified to determine whether that really matters with what you're about to do in this nuclear situation, which is fair, because I wasn't.
There's not a lot of margin error in nukes.
Not as much. And we go back. That was a history major, right?
Right.
So after living up there, we just decided, mostly I'm from the South, wanted to move back south, and I leveraged my network, my roommate at the academy, Mike Harris, and got a job in Texas. Came back to Dallas in rental services and industry. It really spanned. It was oil and gas, it was midstream, it was construction, paper mills, environmental. So it gave me a lot of exposure to multiple industries and gave me an understanding and appreciation of what industries I liked.
The decision driver was geography.
It was geography.
And I think this is really important because it's okay to make a decision based on geography. We're on the battlefield. We're making a lot of decisions based on where we want to fight from or where we want to rest at, right? And
absolutely.
Additionally, sometimes we let the opportunity drive our geographical decisions. But the reality is you can create opportunity almost anywhere you land if that's where you want to land, especially when we want to benefit our families. Like we want to live where our families want to live. Just trust the fact that you can create opportunity for yourself in that geography if you're willing to study the route and meet the right people.
And just like in the battlefield, situations change, right? Yep. When my wife and I, recently married, younger, we were open to wherever, right? Washington was an experience. It was great. Love the company. I love the people I worked with. We get great outdoor activities, right? You get to go elk hunting. We don't have elk in Alabama and Tennessee where I grew up. So it was great. But, you have kids. We had a couple kids, and then we realized I want to raise my kids back in the South and culture closer to family than a flight away. So, situation changed.
That's right.
And that kind of drove that.
What's the great answer for the combat? Like, I use it, situation, train, dictate. Like, hey, what are you going to do?
Right.
Hey, situation, train, dictate. I'll tell you when I get there.
Exactly. So that was great. Did well. Another great learning experience, right? Because I was learning something else. I was learning how to manage a branch, how to manage an area, how to work with a corporate structure, a corporate environment that was not heavily operations driven, totally different dynamic. And they ended up moving me to Baton Rouge, and it was a good promotion, good at the time. And that was fine. It was still within our comfort zone, right? Family approved. We completed the sale of our company.
Mm-hmm.
We transitioned with a new company. We helped them out. We call it the post-acquisition integration is what they kind of call that when you buy and you kind of merge together. That was fun. The company we were bought by was a great company. They had great benefits. They took care of the employees, but my role within the company wasn't exactly what I was looking for.
Right.
And I wanted to go fix things, and that was a machine, right? And that was great.
Yeah.
But they didn't need people like me running around, just like adjusting.
Yeah, you want to find how you know how to fight. That's natural. And that's another point. Like, hey, if you pick the place you want to be, you're going to fight better from that place you want to be. If you pick the things you want to do, you're probably going to fight better doing what you want to do in the place that you want to be. So it's okay when you go from that high ground to. It's not like we go to the base of the boardroom mountain. It's okay to let preference and opinion and all these other things drive the train and shape an approach to the peak, because that is how the ball field and the battlefield work, right? And so those things do export as we go to the boardroom.
Absolutely. So when I decided to make a transition, I followed a former executive to his new company, really stressing how you perform matters, but the relationships that you nurture and that you maintain matters a lot.
Yeah.
Right? And that ties back into everybody likes to scoff at the phrase, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know. It's like, well, maybe to a point. You need to know enough.
Yeah.
But the who you know is the trust factor, right?
Yeah, and I also think that there's a lot of what you know that plays into who you know. It's kind of assumptive of each other. They're not mutually exclusive. Like, there's probably a reason that who you know because of what you know and the value you provided to them and the value they provided to you. So but who you know is equally as dominant and often, especially in the boardroom, as a more significant quality. And it's assumptive of what you know.
Yeah, look at Tebow, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And not a knock. He's athletic. He certainly knows the game. It's not like me calling up my buddy Urban. We're not buddies.
Yeah.
But I look a lot bigger on camera.
It's the fusion of who and what you know, right? And you see that in transition. You see a lot of head coaches come in and they bring in a strength coach because of who the strength coach is, but also what the strength coach does to the players that the head coach needs to field the team that he got hired to field.
Exactly. So I followed. It went well there for really only a year and a half. They had a lot of changes, and then we hit COVID. And really, the family just started doing internal evaluation. And once again, terrain dictated, and we just decided we enjoyed Baton Rouge to a point. We wanted to get back to Dallas for the kids' school and the kids' sports, greater economic opportunity. And so we decided we moved back to Dallas, and we made the decision to move to Dallas, not having a job to transition. We knew that it was going to work out. And
yeah, I think that's so fascinating. That's such a point that's important for, if you're transitioning from the ball to the battlefield, listen to what he just said. What he said is like, hey, I'm going to pick a fighting position, right? Because you can't always pick a fight, but you can pick a fighting position a lot of the times. And when you have a good fighting position, then you got a lot of strength. You got a lot of strength to pivot on, right? So, I used to tell my friends, like, hey, don't chase the fight, man. Chase the high ground. And when the fight comes to you and you have the high ground, it's even better.
Yeah, especially, you look at a quick plug for the DFW Metroplex and the economy, right? And that's when you have to understand, going back to the roadmap, where do you want to go?
Right.
What do you want to do? Because if you are going to be a process improvement, you're going to be the change guy, and you're going to fix the broken outfit, and that's what you enjoy.
Yeah.
And then you take some really nice job in the middle of nowhere in Mississippi, for example.
Right.
That's great. But you got to understand, there's going to be a point in time where you're done fixing it.
That's right.
Which means you're either going to turn into the maintain guy, which if that's what you want to do, that's fine.
Yeah.
Or you're going to need to move.
Yeah.
And when I started looking at that, I didn't want to move when my son started high school.
Yeah.
Right. So I started looking at that next opportunity. So you got to continuously assess that roadmap ahead of you. Are you still on the same?
Yeah, you're checking that you're checking that azimuth. Terrain's got to vote, right? So, you pick your azimuth, and then you're checking it all the time. Like, hey man, how do I deviate a few degrees to go around this thing that wasn't on the map that Intel sent me, right? So you pick that azimuth and you pick that fighting position, and a lot of life is just adjusting on the fly.
And so when we got back here, I had decided that I kind of wanted to learn something different, get into something different. I enjoyed the M&A, the mergers and acquisitions involvement I've been in the past on the operations side. I wanted to get on the other side of the table, learn the financing, learn the structuring and the deal making. And I was fortunate enough to link in with fellow Academy grad, 1978 Brian Livingston, and taking on the construction and industrial sector here. But that transition, it's a little late. I don't have a deal background necessarily. Right. So I also, in talking with a lot of folks, ran into you don't have an engineering degree,
right?
Or you don't have you haven't been in finance for the past 10 years. So how do you articulate your message to go after what you're looking to do? How do you make that transition? Right. And back to your roadmap, right? There are things, if I knew I wanted to get here, I probably could have taken an easier route.
Mm-hmm.
I could have taken a quicker route. I could have done some things, but there are things that I intentionally did with some additional coursework. Even I get the master's, but even some post-master's work strictly on valuations M&A that I did on my own dime.
It's like going to a school, getting an executive MBA in this, getting a cert in this skill. Like, you can offset having, the history major with 7 certifications from reputable organizations that validate your skill at this. It's very similar to, like, you're building that DD-214 where you're building these certs and quals that validate or complement. Because then what happens is, one, you actually have the skill, but two, you have all these intangibles from the battlefield and the ball field that you came from that really increase your value proposition.
That's right. And don't discount the value of the language, right? Speaking the language and understanding is also going to expedite your ability to pick up and run with whatever new position you're walking into.
Yeah.
Because if you don't even understand what the other people are talking about because you haven't done some additional homework, then you're going to be at a disadvantage. You'll pick it up eventually, but if you can at least understand what they're saying and talking about, you're going to be running a lot faster, a lot quicker.
I'll give you an embarrassing example of how true that is, because I love that you said meetings, mergers and acquisitions, because when I first got out, someone said, hey, I want you to talk to this M&A guy. And I was like, meetings and appointments. Okay, M&A stands for meetings and appointments. It doesn't stand for meetings and appointments. So like, it's like an acronym codex there. So mergers and acquisitions, right? So
yeah, it's fun. I mean, I enjoy what I do. I get to speak with a lot of people. And it's still I get to exercise the the statistical stuff, the analytical, the finance side. But I get to talk with a lot of owners and a lot of investors on what they're looking to do. How do you talk with an owner and kind of work them into a better situation for themselves?
Well, that's
identifying some opportunities for them.
That's a hallmark of Ramadi, visiting with the elders and visiting with the townspeople and going, hey, what do you want Ramadi to be like, and how do we help you accomplish that goal?
Right.
That's a no-fail grad school experience right there. So, real quick, with the time that we have left, so there's a few things I've heard you say that are great. One, recognize that from an academic perspective, you may hit the base of that boardroom mountain without the understood quals of the path towards the peak there. But you can offset that with getting, executive MBAs, certifications, particular skills. Like, those things are valued and respected. The second thing they do is they teach you the language. They teach you the codex of this particular path. Like, we don't go all over the world military and make people learn English. We have, we test, DLAB, see if someone has a language aptitude. Part of our obligation going there is cultural appreciation. The third thing I heard you say is geography drove major decisions. You picked a good fighting position, because when you have a good fighting position, you can take a lot more uncertainty than if you don't have a good fighting position. One of the other things you said is it doesn't really change. Who you know matters, and who you know and what you know both matter, but what you know is built into the who you know anyway, right? And so with the time that we have left, because again, one of our things, we're trying to win a war on veteran suicide, taking the number 22 to 21 and 21 to 9. So thematically, we're going to try to keep these to 22 minutes and 21 seconds or there, because we just want that seared into people's heads that that's a problem we're trying to solve. Because not finding a way to the peak on the boardroom when you've been an apex predator on the battlefield, on the battlefield, is one of those discouraging things that has led some of our friends down, that long dark road, right? But what's a day in the life of an M&A professional like? What's a day in the life, or week in the life of an M&A professional?
So, it's a lot of different components. A lot of it's traditional sales and marketing. It's a lot of outreach, a lot of trying to get a hold of people, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that's phone calls, whether that's emails, digging up and researching companies.
That's intel. That's an exportable skill. Like, most people understand, like, we're responsible for cultivating or interpreting a percentage of our intel. It's like, we're not just sitting there waiting for intel to bring us everything. Intel's got a lot to do. So it's meeting intel's efforts with our own organic efforts. That's an exportable skill. So you already know how to do that.
It is. So driving that, following up and diving into, tacking on to the intel side, but learning about what you're reaching out to, the company, but also the industry. What are the things that matter within the industry? What makes Bob's HVAC company valuable?
Yeah.
Right. What makes? Yeah. What's the driver? Right. So get a lot of research, a lot of looking, a lot of outreach. And then finally, when you're, there's some negotiation aspect of it, right? When you're signing new clients, and then when you're looking for investors, and then a lot of work, right? Diving in, helping them market their company, because back to how do you translate your skills into what you want to do, right? How do you help translate somebody's life work, 35 years of business, and really stress in the past few years of financials? How do you put that in a package that you can present to buyers and say, God, that's interesting, that's intriguing, I want to learn more, and working, and then working through them through the process. So it's a lot of conversations, it's a lot of research and digging in, and there's a lot of grunt work.
Yeah, here's what I love, and I love that you ended it with the word grunt. We got about 55 seconds here to put a bow on it. And on this first one, we may be left or right. Most of that's my fault,
right?
From a time fuse perspective. But a lot of what you described are skills that, like, 0311, 11 Bravo, just straight up infantry grunts know how to do. You've already done it. And those of you who are in that space, in those professions, and just know that you're more uniquely suited and capable of reaching the same peak on the boardroom high ground as you were on the ball field on the battlefield. And that's what this show's about. This show's about giving you a faster path to where we are than what we took. Ty, excited to do this with you. It's fun to have you on kind of the round table. I think maybe one of the things we do next is call the old CB over at Jacobs Engineering and kind of get some of his thoughts on We Build, We Fight.
We should. Hey, Clint, look, I'm really glad that you invited me to be a part of this, and glad to help. I love the I love sporting this shirt, and I'm looking forward to it this weekend.
Yeah, that'll be good. Memorial Day is special. It's really interesting that the timing of all this is lined up now. So we're excited to be on the road together. Be encouraged if you're transitioning right now that there's a path to the high ground, and hopefully this show can help you get there. So Todd, thanks for who you are, what you do, and for sharing your roadmap with the listeners right now. Clint Bruce, Ty Rose. Until next time, ever onward.